You get the same results all the time. When you have the same type of relationship and you keep dating the same person, there's a problem with you. You have a pattern. You date the same person, and it's not the same person, but the same characteristics, same behaviors, and you want to blame that person. No, you are the one that are choosing certain patterns and certain things.
Welcome back to the Paralyzed to Prosperous podcast, where we talk about business, leadership, and personal development. Hey, so how you doing, Adelaide? How you doing today?
What's up, fam? I am good. Happy to be back, and ready to get this work.
Awesome. And we also got my guy Jorge. Jorge, talk to us.
Hey, you already know it's your boy Wheels. Listen, man, God is good, grateful, you know what I'm saying? And just really learning to just be self, right? Just be self. And that's just where I'm at right now, my brother. I'm just in a space that be Jorge, just be Jorge. That's it. No matter what room God has put you in, you just be yourself, have awareness, make adjustments, and enjoy what you have in front of you. That's where I'm at.
100%. And that's the formula to everything. For me, formula to anxiety, being myself. You know what I'm saying? For other people, it could be a formula to something else they're going on with mentally, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like always be yourself, and you're going to be rewarded. It might not be quick. It might not be like you want it to be, but it's going to happen. You're going to be rewarded.
You gotta, whether you win or lose, if you're not yourself, then it doesn't mean so you gotta operate of truly, you know, who that is, and you're gonna take the wins and the losses. But you just got, what I've learned at 46 years old, at this point in my life, after achieving, certain areas of success and still seeking others, is that life is so short, guys. Like, life is so short. Like put aside all the foolishness. If you're not having fun through the process, what are we doing? Like, for real. And there's moments how Adelaide just asked me before we jumped on, like, yo, what's up? What you did today? And I'm like, man, listen, I got like 7 papers that 7 assignments, not 7 papers, but 7 assignments that I got to submit by Sunday. And it's crunch time. I got like 3 weeks. And mind you, bless you, bro.
Thank you.
Overwhelming, you know what I'm saying, at times, but I'm enjoying the process, man. I really am, and I'm just grateful for God, though. So yeah, that's my bad. I went on a little rant, but that's just that's something that's been in my heart.
Hey, real quick on a side note, what's crazy to me about speakers, like, you know how you was talking, I sneezed, and then you went right back into what you were saying. I can't do that. I can't do that. Now, like, y'all cognizant of that y'all do that, I really be trying to work on. But no, you didn't. You said just enough, my man. But hey, so we definitely got on here today to kind of talk about a certain subject, right? The thing about Jorge is, for me and Adelaide, there's a lot of stuff he don't be telling us. A lot of stuff. And like, for instance, my man has a whole day dedicated to him in the city, and we didn't know about it until at least 6-7 months into working with him, right? Mm-hmm. So this story today is kind of derived off of, you know, just one of the stories that he's told us, and we kind of want y'all to hear it, and we kind of want to have a conversation about it, right? So, yeah, Jorge, you know, kind of talk to us about the when you were homeless, when you first got in the wheelchair, when you were homeless, you know, talk to us.
Yeah, man. You know, and the reason that I think that certain things I just don't bring up, it's not intentional. It's a way of life for me. Like I'll be honest with you. So a lot of times we don't see the value in certain things. And that's something that, you know, I think we're all victims of. Like, we just don't like, the world be like, yo, that's amazing. You're like, oh, for real? Or if you compliment somebody on a shirt, it's like, oh, this old thing? Like, you know what I'm saying? We always water down ourselves. No, it's for real. It's real like that, right? And so I think subconsciously, you know, I get so caught up with just what's next that I forget to look back and enjoy what we have conquered and what we have accomplished. And I want everybody to really listen to that, because there has to be a balance. You can't stay stuck in the past, but you also got to enjoy the fruits of your labors. Going back to what I just finished saying when we started, which is like being yourself and enjoying the process. And that's part of it, like when taking your wins. So the whole thing about, you know, me being in a wheelchair, me being homeless in a wheelchair, yeah, man, I as you asked me the question, it brought me right back to being in my grandmother's house. So mind you, I got gunned down in Connecticut, and that was May 2nd of '94. That took about several months. And so after I came out of rehab, I had to, I went to, I've always lived with my grandmother, but my grandmother always, it was like I lived with my grandmother, got raised with my grandmother, but she would throw me out of the house whenever I wasn't obedient or I didn't want to clean or do something. Like it was just like, yo, you could get out, right? And so I was dealing with that since I was a kid, mind you. Where was I? Where she was throwing me out when I was a kid? Obviously, she was not throwing me outside into the streets. At times, it would be out to the porch, and I'd be there all day, like literally, like I had nowhere to go. But majority of the time, she would send me to my mother's house, and I would go back and forth. It would be like ping pong, right? Like when one couldn't deal with me, that they would put me on the other one, and so I grew up with that. So I just want to give you a sense of like. I've always been with this thing of being displaced and in environments where like, oh, okay, you don't do what I got, what's you don't get in line, then you gotta go. So when I got gunned down, obviously I went to grandma's house because grandma, mind you, that's mom. Like I called them both mom. My grandmother's mom, and I would call my mother mother, but by her name too, right? It was just the weird dynamics of how I got raised. And this is why I tell people all the time, like, me and my mother more got raised like brothers and sisters, if that makes sense, right? She had me at 15 years old. And so when she had me at 15 years old, she, obviously as a kid, having a kid in Puerto Rico, transition, she left me with my grandmother for multiple reasons. And I believe that that's another podcast story. But that when I got put in the chair, ultimately the where I ended up was my grandmother's house. And mind you, this was all transition for not only myself, but all of us, and, I had this I was going through grieving. I had anger. I had, there was a lot of things that had changed in my life for the, it impacted me in a way that I was like, yo, this is not real. And I remember having a girlfriend at that time and Shorty used to stay with me. But my grandmother had this conflict with her, and that turned into some internal, turmoil, which ultimately, like I'm telling you, I was home probably for like a month, and they got into it. And obviously, she's with me in the house, so I'm not gonna let him. Mind you, my grandmother, she was real quick with the hands, ready to hit somebody or throw something. Yeah, I grew up in a very toxic environment. When I tell you, I grew up in a very toxic environment. Looking back, right, I thought that was normal for me. But looking back, it was very toxic. And I remember intervening with the situation, and literally I got thrown out. And I got thrown out, not only just like thrown out, like you and your girl get out, but all my stuff was put on the porch. And I remember I have to leave everything on the porch and me just kind of literally just, go find somewhere to stay. And so that's just giving you a glimpse of just, things didn't change because I got put in a wheelchair.
Right.
Right. The behavior and the customs that I was around didn't change. And nobody said, well, where is my man gonna go if he, is in the chair? He has health problems now. Like that wasn't considered. It was a lot of emotion, toxic behavior, and that ultimately. And mind you, I'm 17, literally 17. I'm in a wheelchair, and now I have to go find where to stay. That was still in Connecticut. Right. Ultimately, I was able to stay in certain people's houses. My grandmother picked up and left and ended up coming to Massachusetts. And the way she found Massachusetts is that my sister was out here to begin with. And that's how everybody else started following. When I ultimately decided, I stood in Connecticut for like 2 years because I had this mindset, I'm not going to run because I got put in a chair, right? That egotistical, that like, if anything, I got more immersed into the street life. I'm not going to lie. That's when it was one of the most darkest time in my life, which is really the first 2 years of me being in the chair because I had something to prove. I was upset. I was angry. I was really dark. I was in a really dark place, and I was just ready for whatever. Family picked up and left. Grandma went to Massachusetts. I started getting sick after a certain amount of time because at this point, mind you, behaviors are still the same. But what changed, guys? Like it's not the same, right? But it didn't register because I still had to do what? I had to take I had to clean myself. I had to make sure that when I self-catheterized myself, I was doing the proper, procedures, right? The bacteria, all these other stuff that you would have to take into consideration when you are as a paraplegic or any health issues. It's like, bro, you got to have four walls. You got to be stable. You got to be in an environment where you can actually, shower and do certain things. And so I started getting really sick. And mind you, I always talk about how you start realizing who your friends are when you're in times of needs or your life changes. And so these individuals that were at one point in my life, people started peeling off. And I found myself in Connecticut, just kind of like, okay, like we gotta make a change. Ultimately, I ended up following my grandmother, and that was probably 2 years after, mind you. When I got here, same behavior, same. She was great to see me. It was all love. I say probably 6 months into it, again, I had another girlfriend, different girlfriend at this point, and conflict started again, and same patterns, right? The same patterns, same behaviors, and ultimately, I got thrown out. And
A second time.
Second time, yeah. This was a pattern. I was always getting thrown out the house, even when I was a kid. Yeah, this was a pattern. So when she decided to go to New York, from Massachusetts, she did tell me like, yo, come to New York. But at that point, I already, when you just know, like this is bad, but this is going to be just as worse if I end up leaving. I'm not going to go to New York and they get thrown out in New York and being homeless in the streets of New York. Right. Like, that's just, I looked at it like, nah, I can't do that to myself any longer. I have to take a stand. And that's where I really, for the following 2 to 3 years, I was literally going from house to house, like, and mind you, the way that, I've ended up sleeping in the pit shelter, which is, if anybody that knows, in the Worcester area, that's like the bottom of the bottom. Like, I remember staying there a couple, when I did stay there nights, I would have to sleep with one eye open and one eye closed, because it was definitely, very bottom of the barrel type of characteristics in there. And when I mean drug abuse of all kinds, and just, people stealing from each other, in this open room where you just have a cot and you're sitting in there, and it's just like, God, like what is this, right? Mind you, I've always been prideful. I've always been able to, hold my own. But at this point, I'm a paraplegic. I hit the bottom of the bottom. I'm in a different state, guys. Like, that was the killer, right? Because back home, at least I knew how to move. I knew certain people, and now I'm I had to really pivot. And so what helped me is that even through the midst of all this craziness, I said, Jorge, like, we got to do something different, right? And this is why I always explain to everybody, because I want y'all to get the principles out of this. It's not just me being homeless, right? Like, that was a misfortune. That was something that, it was a pattern, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, that was a pattern in my life, and I was always positioning myself where people were throwing me out. Like, and that's just what it was. I wasn't creating the value that I needed to for myself, the stability, so that nobody had that power. Right. But I remember when I ended up in Massachusetts, I was like, yo, we can't continue the same behavior. So I started looking for a GED program. And I found a GED program out here in Plumley Village. And at that time, I started this program, which that's when I started interacting with different type of people that are doing what? They're also seeking to do better for themselves. Right. And those relationships were the catalyst to me navigating, 20-something plus years out here in Worcester.
Okay.
So I want to go back to something you just said, and because this is a huge thing, especially now. Like, I've noticed that these, like, compared to like when I was 22, 23, I feel like more and more kids are living at home with their parents, right? Totally fine. Everybody has their own thing. You could be stacking whatever at home. But my only thing about that is the kids who talk about how they want people to stay out their business and how they want to be stable, how they want to be a boss, right? And they're making excuses off of all the people around them talking about it. Yo, you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess what I'm really saying is you really have to be stable. You have to be on your own 2 feet to get that privilege of being your own boss. People are always going to tell you what to do if you're not your own boss, if you're not stable in your own mentally, let alone physically. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to go back to that real quick.
I just think, and I'll let jump in there, but I just think, be honest with you, like, it really throws me off when anybody, when you're a child, if you as a kid, as being in your parents' house or being in a friend's house or somebody that's taking you in, how do you have the audacity to sit there and try to command or demand your own space or your own way of doing things, and when you're not contributing to whatever the end goal is? And the reality is this: that was not on my grandmother and nobody else. Like, yeah, mind you, I was young. Like, they were throwing me out the house, so it was toxic. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that.
Sure.
As a parent, like that should have never happened, right? But put aside all that, when I hit a certain level of even me after I got shot, I was already doing grown man things. Let's just be honest with you. I was out here acting like I was a grown man, and I was doing grown man behaviors and taking chances like a grown man. Like if I had it like that. That's the reality, right? And so I could sit here and always blame my upbringing. No, like there was a certain time in my life that I have to take responsibility. And from 15 years and older, mind you, I was still a baby, but I own those those decisions I made, right? And that's the difference with a lot of people. It's like, yo, you still blaming X, Y, Z on your parents, on your relationship, whoever it is. And yo, stop that. Like, take accountability. Now, mind you, what I did realize is, going back to what you just said, DJ, it's like I got tired of being a victim of circumstances. Like, I got tired of people just because they decided that I was no good anymore, that, you know, that they were gonna decide that I what my destiny looked like. And I ultimately decided that no matter what, I was gonna put myself in a position that I wasn't going to give control to no one else and how my life. And that's really where that I refuse that brick by brick mentality, because I remember, and this is why whenever I start complaining or I feel a certain way about whatever's happening in my life, I remind myself where I came from. It's like, bro, like, you know what that is. I don't know if we lost DJ, Alalai.
I think we did.
We did, but we're going to keep rocking.
Yeah. So I kind of want to recap a little bit, because I mean, I know, like DJ said, you shared that you were homeless, and we both kind of like, wait a minute, what? I don't think we caught that part. But for those of you that don't know, like, we've been like working together for a couple of years at this point, or almost 2 years at this point. And you know, there's still stories that come out. Like, we're still learning and building with each other. So I kind of want to backtrack, because I want to make sure that I'm tracking, but the audience can track as well, right? So you got shot at 17?
Yep, I got shot at 17, May 2nd of 94. Yep.
17, and you're in Connecticut.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the length of time between you getting shot and going through rehab and your grandmother saying, like, for real, get out, not play, get out, like, you got to go? What was that time frame?
I would say it was within that year, that first year, because I got gunned down in 94. I ended up in Worcester, Massachusetts in February or November of 96. So it was within that year. It was within that 6 months
to a year time frame.
Yeah.
So, I mean, realistically, your body is still definitely healing from the trauma of being gunned down, right? Okay, so within a year, you went from being a regular teenager to getting gunned down, going through rehab, and now you are out on the streets.
Yeah.
So that's within a year. And so then turn around, we're saying, what, 2 years you were on the street before? Well, no, you said you were in Massachusetts in 96. So yeah, roughly 2 years in total between the time you got shot and going through. So let me ask you this. How would you advise people to manage multiple traumatic situations? You being shot, obviously, is a very traumatic situation, a life-altering situation. But then to turn around and to become homeless, another life-altering situation. What advice do you give to people who are managing multiple traumatic situations in a very short time frame? Because that has been our reality. We know COVID keeps coming up, but, talk about COVID. There are a lot of things that happened during COVID that people were not prepared for at all. Yeah. And it turned a lot of people's worlds upside down in a very short amount of time. What advice do you have for those people who are trying to juggle it all?
Yeah. And mind you, great question, right? Because that's really what the intention of us even sharing this, right? It's really understanding, Like there's layers, right? And sometimes we forget what those layers are. So my advice is this, it's funny that, not a funny in a ha-ha way, but just literally like 2 days ago, I was doing a research, right? I was doing some research for school, and it was one of my psychology classes. And what I came across is that there's actually research in regards to youth, right? And so the research was consist of how someone that goes through traumatic events become resilient, right? How do you is resilience something that you have or you don't have? And what the research was really breaking down is that there's individuals that will have what they call luck, right? Great parents, great whatever the situation is, and they could overcome these obstacles because they have the proper systems and supports around them. Mm-hmm. Then you also have individuals, a group of individuals or kids that, there's a percentage of them that would go through some trauma, some traumatic events, and become addicts, become addicted to the streets, become, emerge into, crime, felony lifestyles, right? Like it really, exposes these individuals to operate off of what their environment kind of dictates, right? But then there was a huge percentage of that group of individual where they became successful. That no matter what traumas that they went through, these individuals had everything going against them, everything, and they still became. They still were able to become individuals that thrive in their life. And so the difference, what they would after the research, and as I was breaking down the research, it really came down to mindset, right? It really came down to mindset. It really, because there's individuals that have been thriving and they've been able to be resilient all their childhood, right? But when they get older, they tend to lose grip of or the strength of resiliency because it becomes overbearing of the impact, one trauma after another, right? And so they started off strong, but at the end of the road, they start becoming victims of their own mindset, right? Of their trauma. What they're saying
again, a victim of
their own mindset. Yeah. It was deep. It was deep. And then you have individuals that started off rough, but ended up thriving. So what the research really came down in Jorge's terms, right? Because I'm probably leaving a lot of stuff out and just, theories and concepts and everything. But what I got out of it was that ultimately, resiliency really is a mindset. Traumatic events are only traumatic events if you receive them as traumatic events. There's a lot of individuals that tend to go through traumatic events and have taken those events and turned it into a growing experience and a growing an opportunity to go through whatever they're going through. And it's like you learn and you become stronger. And so I think that for myself, that's what I've been able to do without even knowing I was doing that. Because in my head, Alala, and you hear me saying this all the time, in my head, it's like, and this is something that, again, we're in the personal development, professional development environment. But when I was growing up, I didn't know anything about no personal development. I just knew personal survival. I was operating off of personal survival. And to me, and this is why sometimes I had to stop reframing for this, because to me it was the obvious. It's like, how don't you? Like, you only have one choice in my head, and it's always been like that. You either sit in it, or if you sit in it, you're going to sit in it and it sucks. But if you decide to do something about it, there's a possibility we could get out of this, and there's a possibility that we don't have to sit in there no more. So I don't know about you. I'm going to at least try to get out this locked room, right? If I'm in a locked room and air is getting tight, I'm not just going to sit here and be like, yo, I'm just going to let the next 3 hours go by. We're going to use the next 3 hours to figure out how to get out of this room. And so the mindset is key. So for anybody that's really, and I don't want you to be like, okay, that's easy for you to say, Jorge. No, it's not easy for me to say. This is something that I've told you. I've been gunned down. I've been misplaced. I've been mistreated. I've been by my own peoples. Right. And now, mind you, that this is not me saying that I was a perfect kid and then I was disrespectful. I was literally doing what I was not supposed to do. But that's not something you do to anybody, especially a young child. But I understood in that trauma and that those situations made me the man that I am today, and that's why I'm so strong. That's why there's nothing that I could go through, and again, I'll go through the stages of of depression, fear, whatever it is, anger, whatever those stages are. I go through them just like you do. But then I say, okay, there's a time limit on how long we're going to sit in this foolishness. There's a time limit. And so now it's a perspective. Now I'm going to look at it like, oh, I'm homeless? Okay, Jorge, then you literally, there's a pattern. Everybody's always throwing you out. Now, mind you, put aside my family. Now I'm staying at other people's houses. I share with you guys where I used to buy weed, right? I used to get a little bit of money, buy weed, because it'd be in the middle of winter and I would go to, let's say it was DJ's house, and I would go smoke with DJ. I'm going to put you on. And then I would act like I would fall asleep on their sofa so I didn't get thrown out for the night.
Yeah.
You know how embarrassing, you know how degrading that is? I don't care who you are. Like, that's not a way of living. So when I see people in the corner of the streets and we all assume, oh, you chose to be, nah, like, I get that. I understand with some decisions will lead you into some craziness. And so, yeah, man, mindset is everything when you don't have nothing.
So, because one of the things you mentioned that sticks out to me is like, okay, you went through this experience of being shot, you went through homelessness, you're now in Worcester, you're in Mass, you're with your grandmother again, you're going through it again, right, with her, and she's saying, no, you got to get out again, right? Patterns are patterns, habits are habits, it is what it is. But you pretty much said you had this moment where you're like, no, I can't keep doing this. Mm-hmm. What was that specific moment? Like, what was it in your brain that clicked, or was there a conversation, an interaction? What made your mindset shift? Because obviously you are a survivor, right? You had it in you to survive. But now when we talk about that shift in mindset, you're moving beyond survival where you're, couch hopping and you're taking more responsibility and accountability for your own life when no one can throw you out. What's happening? I want to know what's going on in your mind during that time.
Two things happen. First of all, I found myself, and this is why you got to pay attention to your behaviors, guys. Like, you really got to be, self-awareness is so huge. It's such a powerful thing. I realized, Alalai, that I continue to start hanging out with the same people that I came from from Connecticut. Same people. Not the same people, but the same people, right? Same characteristic. I was starting to hang around with gang members. I started hanging around with dope boys, right? I started putting myself in an environment where all this it's the same patterns. I was finding myself with the same type of group of individuals. I was doing the same thing, smoking bud. But what really hit me one time is that, and this was not just one particular, this was a pattern of thought process, but I could recall the exact moment where I said, bruh, this is not it. I looked around, I'm sitting around, there's about 5 of us, I'm smoking a blunt, I'm sitting around because that's all we did. That's all I did. I had nothing else to do. I smoked bud and just trying to find how I could make this happen in whatever way. And I remember smoking an L, and I remember looking around my circle, and I'm like, this is not it. Great people, but these individuals were not even about themselves. Some of them were just like, and not to knock nobody, because these are some of the people that helped me. Mind you, these are some of the people that gave me the little bit that I didn't have. So I'm never going to ever sit here and downplay them or down talk to them because I feel like I'm better than them and right now in life. Nah. But I realized this circle was not it no more. I remember the conversation that actually even turned me to that point that I'm like, oh, okay. We're talking about like, yo, how would it be if we actually hijacked a money truck or something? And I remember just looking at everybody and I'm like,
hood dreams.
What are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? And I remember smoking that L, and I said, well, I something's got to change. And you know what changed out of that? I stopped smoking cigarettes.
Okay.
Right. So I didn't stop smoking weed right away. Right. Because but it was a process. It was a thought. And so I realized who's around me. I realized the conversations we were actually having. And it wasn't aligning with what I wanted. And I didn't know what that was, but I knew exactly what I didn't want no more. I didn't want this foolishness, and I didn't want these type of conversation, because the next thing that was going to happen to me was 6 feet under, or it was going to be jail behind bars for life. That's all I was going to get out of that path that I was actually on.
That's good. Because that means any of us at any point in time, regardless of the situation, can look up and say, yeah, this ain't it. Like, I want something different. Now, did you know what you wanted at that time?
No.
So you didn't know what you wanted. You just
No.
knew you wanted something different.
I just knew whatever I was doing out of line, DJ, I couldn't do no more. Like that wasn't. Sometimes some of y'all really don't even add it up. It's like, bro, like you get the same results all the time. When you have the same type of relationship and you keep dating the same person, there's a problem with you. You have a pattern. You date the same person, and it's not the same person, but the same characteristics, same behaviors, and you want to blame that person. No, you are the one that are choosing certain patterns and certain things. So I had to really that transition was really about what Jorge was doing, and so I didn't even understand what I wanted, but what I did know is like this is not it, and so I needed to start doing what. What can I do for Jorge, and what can I do to position myself to literally start changing some patterns? And we all talk about, we talked about, maybe this is another episode when we talk about how I, became a barber and how, ultimately these things started falling in front of me. But it was a decision that I had to walk through, right? Because some of y'all want more, want different, have self-awareness, but you don't apply your awareness. Mm-hmm. You don't apply it. Right. And I knew that. I was like, yo, I don't know if this barbering thing is, but what am I going to do? Continue to smoke blood and drive around and not do anything? I didn't have no other choice but to like say, yo, listen, I got to try something different. And if this is the only thing different, it's not that I inspired to be a barber. It's not that I came from a long line of entrepreneurs, 9 to 5. Mind you, I come from welfare recipients. We used to collect checks, stay at home, and gossip about whoever and anybody, and just come the weekend and try to party off the little bit of money we had. That was the lifestyle I was brought up in. And mind you, I love my peoples, and it's not knocking my peoples, but I wanted more from life, and I wanted more from myself, and so I needed to do more.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good.
I think the biggest thing about your story, I guess, for me, it's like there's a lot of rain throughout your life. There's a lot of things problems. There's a lot of from the chair, from the way you grew up, et cetera, et cetera. But you didn't complain about it. And yes, there was problems. There was times where your ego got in the way, but you, regardless of all the ego, blah, 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 you didn't complain about it. And so it was like, yo, you didn't, a saying that says, I didn't pray for rain to stop or pray to learn to dance to it. It's like you basically learned to really tap dance to the rain. You learn how to tap the rain. What's that? You learn how to net the rain, all that stuff. So,
but I didn't do that intentionally, right? I want people to understand that wasn't something that I intentionally said, I'm going to be deep about something. I just, like when you're facing trauma and you're facing nothing else but yourself and you don't have no other option, you just got to choose to do different. And that's not being deep. That's not being Mr. Motivational. Like, I'm going to keep it 100 with you. Like, that was my biggest downfall was my pride. And my pride would get the best of me. It would put me in a position where I got thrown out. My pride would put me in a position where I had beef with half the city. My pride would put me in a position where I didn't care, ready to die. Like, I would tell you in your face, like, what it was going to go down. Like, you would look at me like, bro, like, you for real? You're like 4 or 5 in the chair and you talking all this greasiness? And I'm like, I don't care, right? Like, that pride was really my enemy. And it was me. And when I started understanding what that was, that's when everything started falling into place. I remember when I first got into Rob Roy and the first time I was going to cut haircut, and it was first client. Dude looked at me, looked at my chair up and down and laughed at me. Bro, do you understand that I almost grabbed a pair of clippers and bashed dude over the head? Right? Like I turned red, and I'm a little dark. I turned red and I was embarrassed. And where I came from, what I was taught was like, yo, you don't let nobody talk to you. I don't care where it is. I told you I almost got killed in the courthouse because I wasn't letting somebody disrespect me. And mind you, I ate that. I breathed. I shout out to Miss Gioquinto because she put her hand on my chest. She said, I got this. She was like, yo, listen, if you don't let my man cut your hair, you ain't gonna get here no cut and you ain't never gonna come back. It was like, oh, okay. But that moment, that little moment right there, that if I would have reacted like I normally would have reacted, I would have never been here talking about 20-something years, how I've dominated, and this year consists of standing up. That was the pinnacle point of me making a decision where I was like, ooh, I got it. All you got to do is just really, we got to chill, bro. We not like, this is different. This is not, we're not surviving out here no more. Now we got to start thriving out here. That was,
and it seems like you also realize in that moment that it's you versus you. You know what I'm saying? It's not you versus anybody else. It's you versus you.
That was
That's
the
all.
beginning. That was the beginning of understanding. Don't ever let nobody or anything get you out of track, because when you do that out of character, you're the one that's gonna lose. That was the beginning of that method for me.
Jorge, be honest. Did you mess that man fade up on purpose?
Oh, be honest with you, I did. I know I did. I know I rocked them, but I was so nervous and I was so beside myself because I didn't know. Like, mind you, just because I let it go at the moment, I was like, now mind you, I want you to see this. I was brought up that you don't touch no other man's face. You don't touch my face. You don't come in my bubble. You know how crazy that it wasn't even the cutting hair part of things. It was me getting into another man's space that was the most uncomfortable for me through that process. Like just getting up too close to somebody and touching them in their face, that was the most uncomfortable process I've ever went through. Why? Because I was always taught, don't come in my space. I don't come in your space. When we do that, there's a problem. So for me to go through that moment and then have to touch another man and really get close to him and do X, Y, Z, I wasn't even thinking about the haircut. I was just more on some like I was walking myself through this, like, yo, you got, like, chill, you got this. And it was brand new to me. It was brand new to me, but I had to.
I mean, I ain't gonna lie. The pettiness in me is like, let me just jack this line up just a little bit, since you had something to say about my chair.
And can I be honest with you? I'm sure he got rocked. I don't even recall, but I was more in tune with the fact that I was like, yo, I'm in this position, and like. Yeah. I touched his face. Like, it was just, and that's what it looks like when you start entering a different space of your life, where you know, you got to start really walking yourself through it, and it's uncomfortable, but this is where you get comfortable knowing that this feeling, even though it don't feel good, is going to lead to something great.
But that's so good though, because let's talk about, and again, for those of you who are listening, you know, we talk about transition. We talk about coming out of survival, being able to start taking those first few steps of thriving, and you being uncomfortable, you recognizing like, this is a new territory for me. But I mean, I just want to point out that you were taught culturally, right? Your people, right? That like, it is disrespectful if you're in someone else's face or in their face, and bad things can go down. Versus being in someone's space because of barbering and being able to have like artwork in essence, because the barbering industry is art. It's creativity. It's something beautiful that comes out of it. So it's very interesting to talk about perspective and mindset, how people view that.
Yeah. It changed my life.
A lot of unlearning. Yeah, you had to do a lot of unlearning.
That's what it was, Alan. Right there. That what you just said. That's what. It's not what we don't know that doesn't allow us to get to the next level. It's actually what you do know that paralyzes us.
Yeah.
Unlearn.
Say that again. Say that again for the good people.
Yeah, listen, it's not what you don't know, right? We sit here and be like, oh my God, like I don't know how to do this. I don't got the skill set. How am I going to be able to? No. That's not the problem. The problem that is what's paralyzing you is actually what you do know. Those fears, those perspective of how you see certain situations, certain people, and certain outcomes, right? Your mindset. That's what's paralyzing you when it comes to traumatic events.
That stung a little bit. You have now, like, you're out of the house the second time, but now you're in Worcester. What was the time frame between being out of the house, so being homeless in Worcester, until you get into a space of stability and start flourishing? What is that time span?
So I'm thinking that was like 98, 99, where I got my first apartment. In Worcester. And I got that apartment because at this point, mind you, I told you I've been engaging at a GED program. And even though I didn't get my GED at that time, because that's not when I got my GED, I actually got resources. And if anybody that's ever been to a GED program, they have resources. They really try to help you out, right? Shout out to Chris. Chris was my teacher at the time. This lady, I always talk about Miss Giaquinto, but Chris was one that, you know, she was paying my bills. My first apartment. Chris didn't have no kids. Chris was just a Caucasian older lady. And at first I didn't know how to like really this, like, I was just like, what? good with this lady.
Again, unlearning.
Yeah, I'm learning. What's good with this lady? And Chris literally was an amazing human being. An amazing heart. She didn't just love on me. She loved on her group of students, so these relationships. I go back to relationships. What allowed me to get to where I'm at right now. It's relationships. That's why when I talk to you guys know that I'm not always like the pleasant person, this or that, but I'm always trying to be ethical, right? I always try to
Yeah.
make sure what's right because I believe that relationships, is everything. That's equity, and so I value if somebody keeps it 100 with me, I go beyond, right? Like I make sure I'll take the shorts. I'll make sure that I'll eat that. Why? Because I want that individual to understand that we in this together. I got you, and it's because of people like Chris, Mr. Quento, that they didn't have to do that, right? Chris didn't have to
Right.
go and pay my light bill and go do this and make sure that she was trying to teach me how to do some budgeting, which was like the first person I ever really even like, bro, you gotta really like check yourself. You gotta make sure that this is good and there's a certain thing comes in and that was the
Yeah.
catalyst of like I started coming around people that were literally showing me how to really navigate through life the right way, so I could get to my life that I'm in right now.
That's awesome. And I have to point out, because I have seen this in my own life and I've seen this in just observing other people. Wherever you are, there will always be people there to support you and feed into whatever it is you're invested into. So when you were invested into smoking weed and doing nothing, there were people that supported that lifestyle in that way. When you got to the next level and were invested in your education and trying to do better for yourself, there were people that invested in that for you. Same thing for people listening, wherever you are, there will be someone investing in you or multiple people that will invest into where you are. It's just, what are you investing into exactly? Is it productive or is it something that's going to waste your time and waste your talent?
That's it. I couldn't have broke that down any better. DJ, you finally you made it with us, man. Like you've been playing hide and go seek through this whole podcast, man. Talk to us, man. Oh, you frozen.
I can hear you.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah, I dropped sound a long. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I dropped sound a long time ago, so I've been kind of lip syncing. But hey, authentic podcast. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. So y'all got to close out for sure.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. Jorge, do you have any final words for the people?
I guess it's this, man. We know you're going through something. Even for those that are not, and going through homelessness, health issues. There's something. It's called human life. Like even those people that are thriving with the 6, 7, 8 figures, they're going through something. We all going through something. I want you to know that pain is universal. We all go through pain. It doesn't matter what aspects of life we in. It doesn't matter how much zeros you have in your account. We all go through that. So I want you to really understand that you're not alone, right? And so, mindset is everything. And the only way that I've been able to get from where I was to where I'm at now, and how I'm going to get from where I'm at now to where I want, right? When you hear me talking about PhD, you hear me talking about legacy, generational wealth, like that's a it's a reach for me, but it's not impossible. And the one thing that I want you to always do is bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. Because ain't nobody gonna ever gonna be able to do something for you more than what you're gonna do for yourself. And so you just gotta take that accountability, take that responsibility, and say, you know what, this is on me. This is on me. I had a messed up childhood. I've been cheated on. I've been like, I get whatever it is. I've been shot at. We've done things that are not ethical. We've done things that are not moments of our life that we are prideful of. But you can't sit in there. Because what you're going to do is literally just waste your life in the could have, should have been type of individual. And so to me, it's a no-brainer is that when you bet on yourself and when you actually not only take accountability, but most importantly, like just forgive yourself, right? Like give yourself some grace. Like it's all right. We all human. We're going to drop the ball. But after that, it's that awareness, apply it. And what does that mean? Well, Jorge, I don't know what's next for me. Well, what I do know is that when you don't know what's next for you, you always work on yourself. When I was in a wheelchair and I was overweight, I said, okay, well, let's lose some weight. When I felt that people were not being authentically and I was being a bother, I said, well, get your money up. Because when you have money, you got more options. You could rent somebody, you could pay somebody to do something, right? It gives you options. And then when I got to a point that I wanted more in life, I said, well, let's go back to school. Why not? And so that's just me. That's how I took responsibility of and accountability of what my life looks like. And mind you, it's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be challenging. But in the midst of all that, I just need you to have fun, right? Enjoy yourself while you're going through this process, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. So that's my 2 cents for you today. You got this, and we're going to continue to walk forward with you, right? Let's get it.
Awesome. Guys, thanks for listening to another episode of the Paralyzed the Prosperous podcast. We will be back next week with a fresh episode for you. In the meantime, you can connect with us on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. And then we had a couple people reach out for one-on-one coaching. Jorge does offer one-on-one coaching. Make sure you check out our website at ajorgesierra.com. Until next time, guys, peace out.
Let's go.